Detroit is the largest city in the state of Michigan. It is located in the Midwestern United States. With an abundance of waterways and natural resources, the area offers numerous places for personal reflection on life. In the early 20th century, many people moved to Detroit because of employment opportunities. Known as Motor City and home to the carmaker Ford, Detroit continues to be an important center for the automobile industry. Over the years, the city has faced economic challenges and deprivation. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada visited Detroit several times during his preaching travels. He encouraged the purchase of the Fisher Mansion, which became a major Vaishnava center in the West. Srila Prabhupada taught devotional service, Bhakti. It includes the worship of the deity of Krishna on the altar.
Can you tell us about the time Srila Prabhupada came to purchase the Temple of Detroit, the famous Fisher Mansion?
Well, I wasn't here at the time, but what I remember hearing before is that Prabhupada came here and they were looking at different buildings. A number of devotees were there with him, along with the real estate agent and the owner of the place. So they were looking around at the place. They convinced that they would come up with the money. And so I think it was the next day or two where with the help of Lekshivani Devidasi and Ambarish Prabhu, they came up with the money between the two of them to actually meet the purchase price for the building of $300,000 at the time. So that's a summary of how the whole thing came into being.
Which were the first deities to be installed in Detroit?
The first deities that came were Lord Jagannath, Lord Balaram, and Lady Subhadra. They're from the Forest Street Temple, which was the first temple in Detroit, on Wayne State University area. Then came Radhakunja Bihari. In 1972, they were installed on the Jefferson Avenue Temple. So Srila Prabhupada was present in Detroit in this temple when the Gaurnitai were installed in 1976. So Srinathji was brought here in 1993, placed in Lawrence Fisher's tiled boat well, which is just beautiful. So originally it had water, now it has a floor, and there's a beautiful altar. So people used to come just to get a glimpse of the boat well when the door was open, just to see the inside, because it's so spectacular.
I'd been searching for God, for the truth, for about a year. I mean, every day. At the time, I was doing some yoga. I'd become a vegetarian. I didn't know much about who God was. I was praying to Jesus. I felt like there was something more I needed to know. And I was praying, and then I met a devotee. I was a freshman at Ohio University. And when I came in contact with reading the Bhagavad Gita, it was the first small version of the Bhagavad Gita. It answered so many of my questions, and I felt very excited to have come in contact with this. And I came up here to Detroit for the first time in 1976 from Cleveland. And Prabhupada just happened to be here at that time. We were living in the Fisher Mansion. The room's now called Dolly Fisher's room. That was Mr. Fisher's wife. Were women devotees, and the men were downstairs. And we, at that time, hardly had any possessions. We had our sleeping bags. We would get up every morning. We would all go to the Mangal Artik program, and we'd go out. We'd have different services. Like my service has always been cooking and deity worship, and I remember also polishing the silver. And at that time, Srila Prabhupada stayed in the mansion. At that time, he was talking a lot to Ambarish, who was Alfred Ford, and Leka Shivanti lived here at that time. Wateruther's daughter, who became a devotee. She lived here for a long time. So it was very nice.
By 1976, Srila Prabhupada had established centers in major cities all over the world, and increasingly more people came in contact with the Vedic way of life. Srila Prabhupada's followers have continued to spread the message of the Bhagavad Gita through philosophical discourses, book distribution, and mantra meditation.
How is Srila Prabhupada different from all the other gurus that you met throughout your life?
Throughout my life, I met many different sannyasis and spiritual masters in India. But after meeting the devotees of Srila Prabhupada first, and then reading his books, and then coming to the Krishna consciousness directly in touch of Srila Prabhupada's movement, I found out the difference between Srila Prabhupada and all the rest of the people I met. The main difference is I might have become a good human being just by their either association or following, but Srila Prabhupada gave me opportunity to develop love for Krishna in my heart, participate in loving service to Lord Krishna, and give me opportunity to go back to Godhead possibly. Srila Prabhupada established this temple, this movement in such a way, just like me, anybody and everybody can get this opportunity to develop pure love for Krishna just by participating in a simplest way.
Because we know from the Lord's statement in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna that what does repression accomplish? Right? You know, Arjuna was asking Krishna, that's so difficult to control my mind. It's like the wind. It seems almost impossible. And Krishna says, that's right, because what does repression accomplish? You can't repress the senses. Krishna says you have to get a higher taste.
When did you meet the devotees?
I met the devotees around 1979, 1978. I met Lokanath. His name actually was Lonnie Jackson at that time. I met him in Ann Arbor, and I actually lived across the street from the temple, and I didn't even know it. You know, it was like amazing, because the first time when I moved in my apartment, I went to this house and knocked on the door and asked if I could use the phone, and they said, yeah, no problem, you know, just take your shoes off. And like I said, I had no idea that at that point I was meeting Hare Krishna devotees.
When did you start distributing books and chanting Hare Krishna at the university?
I was in University of Michigan, which is in Ann Arbor, only about 45 minutes away. I was helping a friend there who's also a devotee with a school project. I began twice a week doing regular Harinam and book distribution with a few of the students on campus when they could join. And there was a Bhakti Yoga Society. By the next year, through some book distribution and chanting, we'd met a few sincere souls that wanted to live together in a Krishna house. So we rented a property, and now we're renting a property at Eastern Michigan University, which is just down the road from Ann Arbor. So there's two universities there, both 25,000+ students. And by the grace of Krishna, we have a spot there to reach out to them and hold programs.
years when we were in Baltimore, we saw our first Hare Krishna on the street, and I didn't know what they were doing. And I asked my husband, would you ever get involved in something like that? He ended up being in the first group that Bhakti Swami initiated. I took a class, and all my questions were answered, so I became a devotee. Then my son, my daughter.
What is your background and who was the first devotee that you met?
I grew up as a traditional Native American, and I had spent my life in those services and that practice, but it wasn't enough, it wasn't fulfilling. There were so many gaps missing, so many questions that my spiritual teachers weren't able to answer. And so I had spent several years through different yoga processes trying to find something more, going deeper. And eventually I was doing this dance meditation with a friend, and he took me to this yoga festival in northern Michigan where I met Deva Madhava Das, and he was sitting on a stage with other devotees chanting. He was playing the harmonium. And the chanting just touched my heart, and I knew that at that very moment, hearing them for the first time, that this is what I had been looking for, this was it. And at that, I knew that whatever it was that he was doing, whatever this was, I was going to be a part of it.
Srila Prabhupada stressed the importance of working together and cooperatively serving the mission of the Lord. At the present time, we may find it difficult to perform even the simplest task. But we can get strength from spiritual practice and mutual appreciation.
What has been the biggest challenge in keeping the temple open?
Well, it's kind of like most any other temple, and that is that the biggest challenge is oftentimes lack of manpower and lack of funds. So with any temple, it's not a unique problem, but it is a basic problem of most temples where we need more manpower, not just manpower for the preaching work or the deity service, but just, regular maintenance of the building, the cleanliness, whatever else we have to do, and as well as funds to continue keeping everything going, paying for the utilities, things like that. Mm-hmm. Fortunately for us, we've got a good crew of dedicated devotees. Some of them are on this electronic fund transfer where every month they give a certain amount of money to the temple. They come here, they help with the deity service, they help with Sunday feast. I mean, we've got a good crew of people that come and help out, and without that, obviously we would be in real dire straits. And that's really where our work, our cooperation is shown. Prabhupada said, your love for me will be shown by our cooperation together. And that kind of cooperation is really what keeps this temple going.
What was the community spirit like in the 70s?
Surprisingly, it was really good. I'm saying surprisingly because we all did live in the same mansion in a very close situation, and since anyone could join, there were different people from all different backgrounds you wouldn't have necessarily been friends with, but we had this common unity that we loved Prabhupada, we loved Krishna, and we wanted to do service. And so actually we had a great community service. Together, the devotees would sew outfits that you see that are now made in India. Mm-hmm. They would sew those outfits. They would string the garlands of flowers that we have fresh every day. Mm-hmm. And we would do things together.